The next era of work will not be defined by humans competing with machines. It will be defined by humans directing systems of intelligence that can reason, act, and increasingly coordinate on our behalf. Welcome to Scouting for Growth. I'm Sabine VanderLinden, CEO of Alchemical Ventures, and this conversation was recorded live at InsurTech Insights Europe in London. My guest is Bárbara Fernández, Deputy Director of MAPFRE Open Innovation and Head of InsurSpace, MAPFRE's InsurTech Accelerator. Bárbara leads MAPFRE's future casting work on how AI assistants and intelligent agents will reshape the way we interact, which makes exactly the right person for the question I've been sitting with for the past few months. Is orchestration, not execution, becoming the most important human skill? Together, we draw the line between augmentation and abdication. We ask what real oversight looks like when people no longer do every task themselves, and how we stop convenience from quietly eroding judgment. Then we take it straight into insurance, when protection becomes predictive, contextual, and always on. What disappears from the customer experience, and where does human presence become more consequential, not less? Because the danger ahead isn't only bad AI, the danger is passive humans. Let's go into it. Welcome, Bárbara, to Scouting for Growth. Bárbara, thank you so much for joining me. We are going to dive a little more on that human-agent collaboration, right? And when we look at some of the changes happening right now in our new era of work, well, we are going not to depend on humans, but we are going to compete with machines, it sounds like. And those machines may actually define where humans actually sit within the ecosystem of the organization. Human may direct systems, right? And actually the intelligence we may use will be about reasoning, acting, and increasing coordination between what we do every day so that we can focus on decision-making, creativity, system thinking. So when we start defining that new human position, what changes when intelligence moves from being a capability that we use internally to a resource we can call on externally to increase our ability to deliver more faster?
Wow. Thank you, Sabine, for this invitation. Well, I think we don't really have an answer for that because we cannot imagine what the future will be. We see what the technology is capable of doing right now, and we envision some things that could be done in the future, but we don't really know how individuals are going to adopt it. So it is true that we can think about doing things faster, which means doing the same processes that we already have in mind. And a machine in that place is going to be better than us, for sure. And you're right, the capability that we have in terms of human beings is about reasoning. A machine can reason at some point, but there's something that you've mentioned. We need to really stop and think and evaluate what the machine is saying to us. So this knowledge that a machine can have, this productivity that a machine can have, would be definitely something that we can use to make better things. And it is true that our role working with this tool, because at the end, this technology is another tool that human beings have created. So it's something that we need to learn how to use. And at the end, the way we are going to be using probably is going to be more focused on trying to understand if the information that is in front of us is the proper one, if it's correct. So it's something that we will need to train once again. We are supposed to be trained to make decisions, but at the end of the day, we are lazy, and we always, if something gives you an answer and it's more or less okay, you trust in it and you go fast because the world is moving super fast and you need to go into that productivity level and this exponential curve that always more, always more, always more. So we adopt that decision and we don't really challenge that decision. So this is going to be some kind of paradox at some point. You're going to come back to what a human being is, which is we need to really judge. We need to challenge the information that we have in front of us. And it is something that we have missed a little bit. I think it is about that. It's about the reasoning capability, meaning that we really need to challenge information that we have in front of us and to really train critical thinking.
We have seen some research last year. There was a piece of research between The Economist and the SAS Institute around the trust dilemma. We trust the machine far more than we should, as you are saying, and we need to become a bit more critical with the insight that comes out of those machines. And so that leads us into implementing better governance and actually understanding what trust by design means as well. But we also hear that people are scared to be irrelevant. So in a way, those shortcuts people are taking is about getting and building that differentiation. So for you, what is the line between augmenting and abdicating?
Wow. Again, human being is lazy by default. And it's not that because it's that survival mode. We need to save energy because if we need to run away, we need to use that energy. So it was from the very beginning in our essence. So this is something similar. If we have something that is useful for us, at the very beginning, we're going to be a little bit scary because we need to be protected. We don't really understand how it works. So at the very beginning, I think there's some kind of reaction. Maybe it's not fear, but it's some kind of, let's see what happens here. But a machine is going to be working, it's going to be helping us. And at the end, adoption is there. If something is making your day easier, I don't know if it's better, but at least easier, you will adopt that. Take it for sure. That's going to happen. So there's a real risk of that. But it's the same that we have suffered with social media. Yeah, we are all aware that it's risky. We are all aware now that it has, that social media have two faces, one very dark and another which is useful because we still keep using it. So it's going to happen the same, in my opinion, with this agentic AI world. We really need to think if the use that we as individuals are doing of this technology is the proper one or not. But this is going to be about auto-discipline. So this frontier is not clear. You will have for sure some best practices and some signals. I'm taking a lot of time. I'm not questioning this. I'm not asking if this is the proper thing. I'm not challenging myself. But this is something that is going to happen at individual level.
Yeah, absolutely. But what you just said is, technology is not bad. AI is not bad. Social media is not bad. It's just part of our daily life. The danger is for us to be passive humans, right? So if people are no longer doing every task that we were used to doing and doing mundane tasks, I'm happy to give this to an AI, right? Repetitive, mundane task or, data re-entry, right? Which we've seen often a lot of people doing, whether it's underwriter or lead generation manager re-entering lead generation data from one system to another. What does real oversight, therefore, look like when human and machine start collaborating?
Well, I think this is scary for everyone because we really need to think about what our work in the future would look like. Yeah, and this is scary because you don't have a clear answer. We use a lot this word of upskilling, reinventing ourselves, and it's amazing, but it's difficult to be done. It's really difficult. In my role, I'm usually looking at the future and trying to analyze and trying to think about that. This is a privilege because not everyone can do that. And I can imagine, and even if I can imagine, because I work on this, I cannot say how my future would look like. So this is something scary. And at the end of the day, I think people needs to open a little bit their mind, needs to explore, needs to be a little bit curious and play with it. Again, this is super easy to say. This is not so easy to be done because we are overwhelmed with our daily job. We are, again, in this crazy world of productivity. Now we see this like some kind of strange thing that we don't really know what it's going to be doing for us. But this is something that happens every single time we have a revolution, an industrial revolution, a technological revolution. We always have this process of creative destruction. It always happens this way. So it's completely natural that we are at some point a little bit scared because we don't know what's the future of the work, what's the future of even the things that our children are going to be studying. I need to give advice to my children about what they could study in the future. I don't have a clue. I don't know.
Yeah.
Years ago, you told them you need to study coding for sure. Now, it is not so clear. So it's about training this capability of being open, training again this critical thinking that is this right? Does it make sense? And to challenge that type of things, you need to have knowledge. So you need to keep learning about a lot of things, probably things that were very old. I mean, mathematics. You need to study mathematics. Oh, there's a machine that is capable to do for you this calculations, amazing information processes. But you need to understand what's behind a little bit, because if not, you don't train your brain in order to challenge assumptions and things like that.
What I find is some of the studies I'm reading right now are talking about the human-agent ratio. So what would be the number of agents a human will be managing? And so some studies said for very mundane activities, each one of us may have 50 agents, reporting to us, and then we orchestrate and we take the final decision. But for area like commercial insurance, complex claim, it might be one person to 3 agents because of the complexity of the work that sits behind it. So judgment, as you said, is going to be really critical for us. And so we are going to always have to balance that convenience versus that judgment. So what does behavioral science need to teach us today, right? To teach system designer, for instance, as well, now that the interface is no longer a screen, but an intelligence layer potentially.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. We've been researching a lot about that because indeed some cognitive experts mentioned that at the end, human beings would need some kind of visual support to process some type of information. So some kind of screens that are going to be there, it is true, but there are things that we're going to be managing using just voice. But this connection, this fluid conversation, I'm speaking, then you answer, and then I text, then I see something. Probably the device that I use to see that information or to hear that information is going to change. But there's going to be this fluid way of moving information in different formats. And you are right. The thing is, there's going to be another element talking to us in the middle, probably, that is that agent. I know the ratio. I think, honestly, this is all about some kind of a speculation, but it helps in terms of generating different scenarios that at the end they are useful tools to help us about think future thinking. But this design has been using behavioral principles for years. Indeed, a lot of user experiences are designed considering our biases in order to influence in a positive way, hopefully in a positive way, customers. You want to increase friction in a specific processes. You want to reduce that friction. You want to help people find things easily. Everything is based on the way we make decisions. And that's behavioral science. That's the principles of behavioral economics. So the question, and you were mentioning that before, is a machine that is going to be acting on my behalf, and I'm talking like a customer, not like a company. Is it going to be influenced by the same biases that I am? Because it's a machine. So it means that probably it does not, the first thing is it's restless. So if you are introducing friction in a process because you don't want me to finish that process, for instance, communication companies, I want to get rid of the services and you create a complex service, a complex experience because you want to increase the friction. If I have an agent, I have a personal agent dealing for me with that process, it's restless. It will happen. So we really need to understand what are the biases, what are the behaviors that a machine is going to have. Am I going to be training my own assistant? Is it going to have the same biases that I do have? Or am I going to train that in order to avoid those biases? So you mentioned before, the first thing is we need to make information visible for machines. But we need to consider that we've been designing, taking into account biases. And we don't know how many things are going to be in front of persons right now and how many things are going to be processed and curated by machines before putting in front of my eyes. Probably I will make the decision. Indeed, you can do it right now. If you want to delegate some functions to an assistant or an agent, you can contract, you can buy things. The recommendation right now is that you make the decision. So your agent is going to show. So it's a little bit similar to the way we are seeking for information, searching for information, but the decision is done by you. But technology allows you to do that. So how are we going to influence customers if they don't make the decision and it's the machine?
It's interesting because you are mentioning the discrimination, the biases, which exist in life, right? If you ask, or once upon a time when we used to ask even Nano Banana or any picture-making devices, generative AI devices for a picture of a seal, it will be white male, usually being shown, which means a form of bias into the system. When you start looking at the internet as well, there's good information and there's bad information. So when we make choices on that mix, we have to have critical thinking to actually decipher the truth from the lie. But you also are talking about how the way systems are going to be built is changing. One conversation I was having is, protocols, right? We are going to have a code, insurance standards, hopefully helping us deal with autonomous AI system. Now we have a number of protocols being built by OpenAI, Stripe, Anthropic to allow connection protocols, communication protocols, e-commerce protocols to allow machine-to-machine interaction. But then on top, you have to have those regulatory guardrails, right? The trust you mentioned. And I think the outcome we need to look to deliver is the trust by design. So how do we do that when a lot of organizations today are probably focusing more on the governance by design than the trust by design element?
When you say trust by design and you apply it to a machine, because you need to trust on the systems that you are generating because they are going to help you in terms of decision making. You cannot design perfect system based on AI.
Yeah.
It's going to have biases. So you need to control them and you need to observe them. It's not only about the guardrails, because it's about the guardrails are for agentic AI, but you have a lot of different things in AI happening that at the end generates biases in the models. So you need to control them and you need to refresh them and you need to clean them at some point. So this is something that you can design machines using this principle in mind that make them trustable. But it is because you govern and you control that. In terms of, let's say, higher vision, what trust means, in my opinion, you cannot design trust talking about a company and a customer relationship. You really need to demonstrate it because trust is something very, very fragile. It takes a lot of time to generate trust.
It does.
It takes 1 second.
And you lose it.
Break it completely.
Absolutely.
So I honestly think you cannot build trust or design. You can have a strong purpose of demonstrating that you are the proper one. But this is something that is going to be demonstrated in every single interaction. And it means that your company needs to really understand that, needs to take care of every single interaction with a customer through a machine or through whatever. And all the systems that you are going to be using needs to be prepared, to be controlled, and to be always evolving to really ensure that we are doing what we must be doing, because there are a lot of ethical issues around this.
So I want to go back to my frontier transformation. And so think about that, right? When I talk about frontier, it's a company able to do intelligence on tap, human agent collaborating, and each one of us becoming an agent boss. So that is the baseline definition. Today, or let's say in November 2022, we started using AI as an assistant. We put a prompt, right? We get an answer. I think over the years, 2025, 2026, we started using AI as a colleague, a co-worker, where we can actually start scheduling things, or we can work as a team as part of a project. We can work together and we can actually make judgment together as a team. We are moving to a world where humans are leading the machine. So a world where we have human-led and system-operated environment, right? Where AI may be agents, which we are operating, or become autonomous. And businesses are going through different levels of maturities to get there. So when insurance become predictive, contextual, because we need context to make those decisions, and always on, right? We are moving to a world where we can make decisions at speed, but everything is happening as we speak. what disappears from the customer experience viewpoint you just mentioned, and what becomes absolutely irreplaceable and most valuable?
It is trust, because I think the customers right now do not really, and even more if we go to Gen Z and other generations coming, they are not so aware about the value an insurance provides.
Yeah.
So at the end is you really need, again, to demonstrate how you help them. Maybe we are embedded, I don't know. Maybe we are not so visible, but when we appear, we really provide value. If we are predictive, it means that we really understand the risk that you are exposed, and we are prepared in order to avoid you suffer any kind of damage. The things that we are always saying, it's prevention. If we are predictive, we act before. And it means that we're going to be a prevention service, which completely changes the operational model. And we've been discussing this for years. It's not happening really, because it's tremendously difficult to change operational model. Even more if you want to connect it to an insurance concept, because there are different business models. So how do we connect that? That's the reason why I think transformation is so difficult. And this frontier is very easy to describe, but it's not so easy to make happen, because you are changing a very big structure that has been working extremely well for years. So how do you evolve that?
There's a new MIT study which came out just a couple of weeks ago, Barbara, which actually has looked at what the business model of the operation of any company may look like in the future. And the top model, the one the furthest, is the orchestrated business model. So how do we become orchestrated will be a question for us to start answering over the next years, I think. But my last question to you is, in a world where intelligence is abundant, right? It's below $1 now to access intelligence. Intelligence is utility. What become the premium human capability we all need to focus on as we actually weave our way through that frontier transformation?
We've mentioned, I honestly think we need to train a lot our critical thinking. We really need to find the proper questions, ask difficult questions. Even if you want to orchestrate, you are the boss of a lot of small machines, you need to ask the proper question. You're going to be working, looking at a goal. And we sometimes in this world, we've missed that.
Yeah.
We are running in a process and we don't really, why this process makes sense? Does it make sense? And I think we need to keep thinking that we have a goal. Why I should be doing this? Mm-hmm. That's the reason you have to orchestrate. Why is the first thing. So this critical thinking is very important. And there is another thing that is very human. I don't know if it's useful or not for companies, but it's part of ourselves. And it's something that we must bear in mind. A machine will never have feelings or emotions. They can simulate them. And it could be useful because you can connect with a machine. There's no official numbers, but in Spain, around 40 people are naming their ChatGPT.
40%, my God.
Something like that. Yeah, it's not official, but I've heard that number. So we really want to connect even with machines. But the truth is, machines have no feeling. And this is something that is very human, and we need to use, I don't know where, how in a company, but emotions is something that we are the only ones that can understand. And it's something that is going to find places to provide value.
We need to make sure that we still remain human, right? And we leverage the machine to augment our lives, I guess. 40% of individuals already using machines as a companion. A lot of people are lonely, and it's understandable. But we also need to actually remember that they don't have any feelings in the end. And so finding the right balance is going to be an interesting way for us, or time to go through to actually still keep the machine where the machine needs to be. Well, Barbara, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Sabine.
Three things I'm taking with me from this conversation. And if you are designing how your people work with AI, I would take them all. 1, the danger is not bad AI, it is passive humans. Trust must be designed, not assumed. And oversight is a discipline, not a dashboard. 2. The line between augmentation and abdication is judgment. If intelligence on tap gives us faster output but weaker judgment, we have automated the wrong thing. And 3, when intelligence becomes abundant, presence becomes premium. As agents absorb the transactional, the human moments that remain carry more weight, not less. Bárbara Fernández, Deputy Director of MAPFRE Open Innovation and Head of Insure Space, thank you for making the human side of this transition impossible to ignore. Live at InsurTech Inside Europe. And this is the second half of a bigger story. In the companion episode, Carlos Sandras Falcon, MAPFRE Scouting and Investment Lead, makes the institutional case why the core must be rebuilt before ecosystems can create value. Bárbara redesigned the human role. Carlos redesigned the institution around it. Find the previous episode in your feed. If this conversation moved your thinking, subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with the one leader you know who still thinks AI adoption is just productivity play. Until next time, keep scouting for growth.